January 2026, Spain. Two former employees file a formal complaint that names Julio Iglesias, and Spain's prosecutors open an investigation. If you grew up with his voice as the soundtrack for romance, this lands like a glitch in the timeline, because the name in the headlines is the same name on decades of slow dance memories. I'm Natasha. This is the Vinyl Vault. And tonight we're doing one thing, cleanly. We're separating what's verified right now from what's being alleged, and from what is still unproven, because the question isn't what do you feel, it's what can actually be confirmed today. Quick note before we go further, this episode discusses allegations of sexual violence and exploitation. If that's difficult for you right now, please take care while listening and come back when you're ready. Now, the verified frame first. No commentary, no moral theater, just the procedural reality as reported in Spanish press. According to reporting by El País, the complaint was presented on January 5, 2026, to the prosecutor's office attached to Spain's Audiencia Nacional by two women represented by the organization Women's Link Worldwide, and the prosecutor's office has opened proceedings to investigate. Other outlets have also described the step-by-step basics. There is a complaint, there is an active prosecutorial investigation, and the women are expected to be heard with protective measures. That's the stack you can say out loud without guessing. Paperwork exists, and the state has moved into the "we are examining this" phase. So what is being alleged? This is where language matters, because one sloppy sentence can turn reporting into accusation as fact, and we're not doing that. The women allege sexual harassment and sexual assault, and reporting also references that the complaint includes possible elements related to trafficking, exploitation, in the context of an employment relationship. These are allegations. They have not been proven in court. They have not been tested in a trial. They are claims that investigators will now try to corroborate or dismiss using evidence, witness statements, and documentation. That distinction isn't a legal technicality. It's the line between truth and rumor. What makes this case especially combustible, socially, culturally, emotionally, is the alleged setting and the alleged relationship dynamic. The reporting describes the complainants as former employees and places the employment context in properties connected to Iglesias in the Caribbean, with references to locations such as the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas. Again, reported context, not proven narrative. But it matters because employment can create dependency. Income, housing, access, recommendations, isolation, the feeling that your entire stability is controlled by someone else. That doesn't automatically mean coercion happened. It means investigators will examine whether power imbalance and working conditions are part of the story being alleged, and whether any records support it. Here's the honest way to think about how much of it is true, without turning into a courtroom cosplay channel. 3 layers. Layer 1, verified procedures. A complaint was filed, prosecutors opened an investigation, protective measures for testimony are reported, institutions are responding publicly to the fact an investigation exists. Layer 2, alleged conduct. The women's claims, what they say happened, are not established facts, but they are now formal allegations under review. Layer 3, what gets evaluated to decide whether this grows or collapses? Reporting indicates investigators may look at communications, documentation tied to employment, and testimony from other possible witnesses, if such material exists and is obtained lawfully. In other words, the story doesn't become true because it's viral. It becomes credible or not based on what can be corroborated. Then comes the response, and this is where the narrative war starts running faster than the legal one. El País reported that Iglesias gave his first statements to Hola, saying that everything will be clarified, while his environment denies the allegations. That's a classic early-stage posture: minimal public detail, broad denial, confidence language. It doesn't prove innocence, and it doesn't prove guilt. but it does create a vacuum, and vacuums get filled. People who already distrust celebrity power hear everything will be clarified and translate it as damage control. People who instinctively distrust accusers hear it and translate it as smear. Neither translation is evidence, they're emotional autocomplete. So, what actually happens next in real world steps without drowning in legal jargon? The complainant's statements are taken under conditions designed to protect identity and reduce retaliation risk. The prosecutor's office gathers material, interviews potential witnesses, evaluates whether the alleged events fall within Spanish jurisdiction and which crimes, if any, could be applicable, and then makes a decision. Request more investigative actions, file charges, or close proceedings if there isn't enough to move forward. That process can be slow. And it's supposed to be slow because the consequences of getting it wrong are massive on both sides. For possible victims, if the system ignores something real, and for the accused, if the system treats allegation as verdict. But while the legal process moves at the speed of procedure, reputational consequence moves at the speed of electricity. And in this case, it moved straight into politics. El País reported that the Spanish government is studying whether to withdraw the gold medal for merit in the fine arts awarded to Iglesias in 2010, and that public figures weighed in sharply, some stressing ethics, others stressing presumption of innocence and the need to investigate first. That debate is emotionally irresistible because it forces a binary choice in public: punish now or wait. And life is rarely that clean. Institutions aren't courts, but they also aren't neutral. A cultural honor is a public signal. If the state keeps the honor, some see it as protection by prestige. If the state removes it now, some see it as punishment without verdict. So the question becomes less about medals and more about what society does with uncertainty. And uncertainty is exactly where audiences get manipulated by algorithms, by partisan incentives, and by the oldest trick in the celebrity scandal playbook: turning a fact pattern into a loyalty test. If you believe the allegations, you're attacking art. If you want due process, you're dismissing victims. Both are lazy frames. You can hold two truths at once. Allegations deserve serious investigation and careful reporting, and presumption of innocence matters until evidence has been tested. The grown-up move is to demand precision. What is confirmed? What is alleged? What is the source for each claim? What would count as corroboration? What would count as exoneration? That's not fence sitting. That's how you avoid becoming somebody's PR puppet. So let's name the emotional trap without turning this into a lecture. Celebrity creates a distortion field. Fame doesn't prove someone is capable of harm, but it does change the incentives around them. It can create silence because careers depend on access. It can create delay because speaking up against a powerful figure can feel like choosing public humiliation and professional risk. It can create polarization because fans treat accusations as attacks on their identity. None of that is proof of any particular outcome in this case. It's context for why these stories explode and why they can also vanish when attention shifts. And if you want to be a serious viewer, someone worth listening to in the comments, you have to resist the need for instant closure. Now, here's the part many people skip: the what would change your mind test. Because in scandals, people say they want truth, but they behave like they want confirmation. So let's do it properly. If prosecutors announce there's corroborating documentation, work records, travel logs, messages, testimony from third parties, anything that stands up under scrutiny, does that change how you evaluate the allegations? If prosecutors close the case for lack of evidence, does that change how you talk about it? Or do you keep repeating the most extreme claim because it gets clicks? If new witnesses appear, do you wait for verification? Or do you treat every new voice as automatically true or automatically lying? The answer to those questions tells you whether you're here for clarity or here for drama. And speaking of drama, yes, this story is perfect for debate. It has all the ingredients that drive viral conversation: a beloved icon, alleged harm, an employment power dynamic, international context, political reaction, and the cultural question everyone thinks they're qualified to answer. Can you separate the artist from the art? But I'm going to tell you something blunt. Separate the art from the artist is easy to say when the artist is an abstraction. It gets harder when the allegations involve real people with real lives, and the legal system still hasn't finished its work. If you decide you can't listen anymore, that's your boundary. If you decide you can, that's your choice. The only thing that's not acceptable is using the uncertainty as an excuse to harass accusers or using the allegations as an excuse to invent facts that haven't been reported. So, where does that leave us tonight, right now, in January 2026? It leaves us with a timeline that's real, even if the outcome is not yet known. January 5th, 2026, complaint presented to the prosecutor's office attached to the Audiencia Nacional by two former employees represented by Women's Link. Prosecutors open proceedings. Iglesias' side denies and says it will be clarified, and the government publicly studies whether to withdraw a 2010 medal amid the controversy. That's the spine. Everything else, the full factual truth of what happened or didn't happen, depends on what investigators can corroborate. And that's also why this story isn't over. It doesn't end with a headline, and it doesn't end with a comment section verdict. It ends when there's a prosecutorial decision, and if it advances, when a court process tests evidence. Until then, the only responsible way to talk about it is to keep your language honest. Alleged, reported, under investigation, denied. Those words aren't cold, they're protective of potential victims, of due process, and of the audience's ability to think. So I'm going to leave you with 3 questions, and I want answers that actually show you were listening. 1. What standard do you personally apply when there's an investigation but no verdict? Do you change how you speak about the person, how you consume their work, how you treat their honors? 2. What kind of evidence would you need to see to feel confident either way? Documentation, third-party witnesses, prosecutorial conclusions, a trial record. 3. Why do you think institutions move fast on reputation but slow on protection? And what would early accountability even look like in a world built on access and celebrity? I'm Natasha. This is the Vinyl Vault. We'll keep tracking this as it develops, and we'll keep doing it the same way. Timeline first, facts separated from allegations, and no performance of certainty where certainty doesn't exist. If you want the next update when there's an actual procedural step, charges filed, case closed, new verified filings, subscribe. And if you're going to comment like someone who respects the difference between I feel and I can confirm.